and for good reason. In the last decade, it swung from left to right to center and back again, and this time no one knows what's going to happen. The candidates include a retired policeman, a fireman, a First Nations healer, a trapper, and Canada's most politicized organic farmer, David Orchard. To say the least, voters here have an interesting choice to make, and believe me, people here take their politics very seriously.
All I'm trying to tell you is correct your information.
No, but you're saying right-wing or left-wing.
No, you in the hallway, outside an all-candidates meeting, there's quite a political debate going on. Not between candidates, but among constituents.
We're not a right-wing.
They were.
No, they were not.
They were.
They were not.
And while they discuss their differences, there's more controversy going on inside. Places are set for all 5 candidates, including Conservative MP Rob Clark. Even one of his volunteers is here handing out leaflets. But as the event is about to begin, organizers realize Clark is a no-show. I'm wondering, where is Mr. Clark tonight?
Mr. Clark is at an event for elders, out in the riding meeting the constituents like he always does.
Is he not concerned that people might be a little upset that he's not showing up here? This is quite a large gathering.
Yes, he is upset that he couldn't make it here tonight, but he does not break his commitments to other constituents that he made months ago to go and see.
But for many people here, the Conservative candidate's absence is a big issue, especially considering many see this as a two-man race between Clark and the Liberal candidate. I'm wondering what brings you out here tonight.
Well, I just want to find out what our candidates stand for and to see what they have to say. I'm really disappointed that Rob Clark is not going to be here. Since he is our Member of Parliament, I would really have liked to have seen what he had to say, so heard what he had to say.
He says that he's too busy campaigning and knocking on doors. What do you think of that?
I find that hard to believe. I think maybe he's afraid to just speak in public.
I thought he was going to show up because I saw his name down there. I heard that he hadn't shown up at the others, and really I'm disappointed about that because I'd like to hear what they all have to say. The Conservative candidate isn't going to be here, apparently. Is that going to be an issue for you?
Absolutely. This is the type of forum that I think those people should be at. And we're paying him for something, but he doesn't seem to find my house anymore now that he's elected.
Well, he says that he's at a meeting of the elders tonight. There's a celebration of some kind going on.
Maybe he is. But I think there's a campaign going on. And this is an excellent forum where he has an opportunity to get his message out to a number of people.
I will now introduce...
The other 4 candidates all attended the forum. They include Rob Ballantyne, running for the First People's National Party of Canada, the NDP's Brian Morin, Green Party candidate George Morin, and Liberal candidate David Orchard. And it didn't take long for the question of Clark's absence to come up.
Can someone here tell me why Mr. Clark did not attend tonight?
It's not right when an elected representative, as Mr. Clark was, is being paid for at the public purse and then refuses to stand in front of the people who pay his salary and defend his ideas and put forward those ideas in the crucible of a debate. I think Mr. Clark is doing a disservice to the people of Middle Lake and this riding by failing to show up.
Okay.
We were at the all-candidates meeting, and all the candidates were there. Your name was there on the table, and people got really upset. Not the candidates, but the people in the audience were upset the fact you weren't there because they came to hear the candidates and you're their MP, and they say, well, we elected this guy and we pay his salary. Why isn't he here? What do you say to those people?
Well, it's unfortunate. I can't be in 2 places at the same time, and hopefully people will respect the decision that I made. I kept my word of attending a seniors event. They were happy that I attended and kept my word. It's my integrity. We told them that I couldn't attend. I was honest with them why I couldn't attend, and I can go home at night and say I kept my word. My integrity is still intact.
So you don't have any regrets about it then?
No, I don't. I just can't be in 2 places at the same time. That's the problem I have.
If you had a chance to be there, if you didn't have this other commitment, would you have been there?
Yes, I would have been there.
Absolutely, no questions.
No questions. This is Joe, 94. Say hi, Joe.
Clark, a former RCMP sergeant, spends a lot of his time campaigning in First Nation communities, like this one in Canoe Lake. 2/3 of the riding's population is Aboriginal. Clark himself is Cree. In fact, he's the first Aboriginal MP ever elected to Conservative Party. And people around here appreciate that.
Well, yeah, we support our Conservative MP, and one of the things that came about Canoe Lake is that when the Conservatives came in, we supported them last election, and the by-election we supported Rob on that, and because of that, we had some attention. Even the Minister of Indian Affairs was here about last summer, the summer before. So we really appreciate when Rob comes around, because we want to show him our support, and of course Prime Minister Harper along with that.
Clark, a 41-year-old husband and father of 2 young children, won this seat in a controversial by-election earlier this year. Controversial because the Liberal candidate he beat, Joan Beattie, a high-profile MLA, was parachuted into the riding by Stéphane Dion. Even Clark admits he was surprised when the election results were posted.
I worked hard. I was going against a high-profile candidate. I was an unknown. And when they announced I had won, I was shocked. Because it was really my first stab in politics, and to go to the level of being a member of Parliament was quite honoring.
Clark had been with the RCMP for 18 years before entering politics. But a tragic event in 2006 changed the direction of his life. 2 officers from the Spiritwood RCMP detachment, 29-year-old Constable Robin Cameron and 26-year-old Constable Mark Bordage, were fatally shot during a high-speed chase. Rob Clark was their sergeant and their friend.
When the shooting happened in Spiritwood, and just seeing people getting hurt, especially RCMP members or police officers in whole, like Constable Mark Bordage and Constable Robin Cameron, I think that was the turning point that I thought I have to get involved more in Ottawa to try to make a difference, especially on gun crimes. And just basically our mandate is to protect and serve. So I thought if I can go to a higher mandate is for safer homes and communities, I thought I could try that. Try to make a difference.
That tragedy in Spiritwood, was that life-changing for you?
It was life-changing for everybody involved. Right in Spiritwood, the families that lost their loved ones. The offenders' families were greatly affected as well. My family, our children, were affected, and Mark and Robin, they had children. That's who will never have a parent again.
And you knew them both quite well, I'm sure.
Yeah, they've worked under me.
Yeah. So that really sort of changed the direction in your life, that you decided, that's it, I've got to do something more. What was the process for you? What was going on in your mind?
Well, I got involved in the nomination process and put my name forward, ran as a nominee, and won the candidacy for the Conservative Party of Canada. And then, lo and behold, on the election night, I became the first First Nations MP for the Conservative Party of Canada.
In their history?
In their history.
Proud moment.
Quite honoring. Humbling.
Scary, too?
When you step into the House of Commons, and you're being led by a minister and the Prime Minister, and you walk down the carpet, and when you're looking to your left and you're looking to the right, and you recognize all these people from television, and you're going, oh my gosh, this can't be happening. It was almost like too surreal. It's almost like a dream.
To you, Mr. Rob Clark, member for the electoral district of Desnethe-Missinippi-Churchill River, who has taken the oath, signed the roll, and now claims the right to take his seat. Let the honourable member take his seat.
and yet the majority of people living in the riding, as the questioner pointed out, are living in poverty, actually living in third world conditions. The unemployment rate in the north is close to 80%, and all of this to me is wrong. It's a national disgrace that we've got people in northern Saskatchewan waiting for houses. People have been on waiting lists for 20 years for houses.
In this election, Clark's main opponent is Liberal candidate David Orchard, a familiar name for anyone who has followed Canadian politics for the last decade or so. Orchard has never held political office, but he's a bit of a political legend. Not so much for what he's done, but what's been done to him. Rod Nickel is a reporter with the Saskatoon Star-Phoenix.
What would be one word for you to describe Mr. Orchard's political career?
Tortured. But resilient. That would be the other word. I mean, you know, he's actually, for a guy with a national profile, he's never been elected to public office. And he just keeps coming back. I mean, he was a vigorous opponent of free trade. Of course, free trade went ahead, so you could say that he lost that battle, as did others. He's sought, this nomination and now has it after some starts and stops. He's pursued the Conservative nomination in Prince Albert before, didn't get it. But he keeps bouncing back.
That ability to bounce back has been one of Orchard's strengths, and there have been a lot of bad bounces during his political career. In 1998, he ran for the leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party and came a distant second to Joe Clark. Then in 2003, he ran for the PC leadership again. He ended up supporting Peter MacKay, a move he came to regret. And more recently, Orchard had planned on running in this riding in the last by-election, but as mentioned, Dion appointed Beattie instead. It was a tough pill for Orchard to swallow, considering he just helped Dion win the Liberal leadership.
He was campaigning hard leading up to the by-election in March and had the rug pulled right out from under him by Stéphane Dion, who wanted to appoint a female Aboriginal candidate in the north. And when it came right down to it, Joan Beattie was appointed by Stéphane Dion.
And of course, Stéphane Dion is the candidate he supported in the leadership convention.
Yeah.
He was stabbed in the back, perhaps?
Betrayal is a recurring theme in Mr. Orchard's political career. Of course, he was betrayed by Peter MacKay, really, when he threw his support behind him in the PC leadership convention. MacKay promised he wouldn't pursue a merger with the Reform Party at that time, and of course he did. And you're quite right. David Orchard swung his grassroots supporters behind Stéphane Dion at the Liberal convention, helped get him elected leader of the Liberal Party. And Stéphane Dion replied with pulling the nomination from him at one of the last moments.
I was asked to run last fall in this riding, and then there was an appointment of someone else made. That person lost the race, and so I was asked to run again. I did run again. I won the nomination in a fair battle, so now here we are. We're into the race.
But of course, you supported Mr. Dion in the leadership race.
Mm-hmm.
He became the leader of the Liberal Party, and then you wanted to run here, and he appoints someone else, and there was quite a controversy about that. I mean, how did you feel about that? I mean, you hope will have Mr. Dion as your leader.
I'm working very hard to help Mr. Dion to win, and I'm still not completely clear what happened last fall with that appointment. All I know is I was asked to run both times, and then when the loss took place, I was asked to run again, and I said that I would if there's no appointment made. I wasn't asking for any appointment myself, and I didn't think an appointment was a good thing, and I won the race in a fair and square manner. So here we are.
How's your back?
My back's fine.
You've been stabbed there a few times. How do you deal with that, and what makes you carry on after that?
Well, I think it was Mr. Turner, John Turner, that said that after Peter MacKay stabbed me in the back, he said, "You came out of that leadership convention clean. Everyone knows that you did. It's Peter MacKay that wears the betrayal. It's not David Orchard." So being stabbed in the back, I think says more about Mr. MacKay in that instance than it says about David Orchard.
And here you are, at it again, running for office. Why are you here? Why are you doing this one more time?
I'm doing this because I don't like the direction that my country is going. Mr. Harper will follow President George Bush, down whatever road Mr. Bush wants to take him. If Mr. Harper had had his way, we would be in the war in Iraq. Mr. Chrétien at least had the courage to say no to that. And now we're going deeper and deeper into this war in Afghanistan, and we're following the American path step by step. Whatever the Americans want us to do, Mr. Harper is right there saying, how quickly should I go there? I'm saying that most Canadians don't want that. I don't want that for my country. I want us to be allies with, or friends with the United States. We trade with the United States, but we stand on our own 2 feet in the world, and we build Canada into a major player that stands on the world scene as an independent voice on the world stage. We stand for some different values than the United States does. We haven't tried to raise our flag over other countries around the world, and I don't think most Canadians want us to do that. But Mr. Harper would essentially blend us into the United States, integrate us into the United States, so that an independent Canadian voice would be ended. So that's what makes me fight. I want more for my country than simply to be a satellite of another nation.
How does that resonate, though, with the voters here? We've got a riding where 2/3 of the people are First Nation, and you talk about the free trade, and you talk about American imperialism, or however you want to call it. But what resonates with the people here? What are you going to have to do to get their vote and to win in this riding?
Well, I think what resonates with the people is the fact that I'm going to be a fighting voice for them. I was adopted into the Tatusis family on Poundmaker Reserve years ago. I've fought on First Nations issues for 3.5 decades now. I was arrested in Meadow Lake here supporting the elders' blockade against clear-cutting of the forest in 1992. Spent a night in the Meadow Lake jail. Many of the First Nations people remember that, and that I stood for them when it wasn't easy to do. Now the forestry practices have changed as a result of the battle that we waged, but it wasn't particularly easy at that time. But the people of the North remember that, and I think they want someone, when you talk about a lone wolf or an outspoken person, this riding has been pushed around, I think, for too long, and the people want someone who's not going to be a mouse sitting in the back of the House of Commons, as one of the chiefs told me. They want someone who's going to stand and say their piece on behalf of the people of this riding, and that's what I'll do on behalf of First Nations people, on behalf of the Métis, and on behalf of the farmers and the non-Aboriginals.
Why with the Liberals?
Well, the Progressive Conservative Party was the party that I was part of, that I ran for the leadership for twice. I signed an agreement with Peter MacKay not to merge the party with the Canadian Alliance, and we delivered 600 delegate votes to him at that convention, you'll remember. He betrayed that, and he gave the party to Mr. Harper. They cut the word progressive off. They threw the progressives out of the party, the Joe Clarks, the David Orchards, all the rest. And so my party didn't exist anymore, doesn't exist anymore. So I had to decide, where do I go? And each of the political parties, I believe, in Canada approached me, but I decided if we're going to stop Mr. Harper and his view of the world and his direction for Canada, that the Liberal Party was the vehicle to use. And of course, the Liberals had asked me to run for them as far back as 1988, when John Turner and Senator Keith Davey had asked me to run for the Liberals. So,
what kind of passion does David Orchard have to to, after all he's been through, to throw his hat into the political arena again? I mean, what does it take? What's driving him?
I think it's his background as a farmer is what he says. He doesn't hold a grudge. He doesn't hold bitterness in, is what he says. He says, as a farmer, you have good years, you have bad years, you move on. You keep putting one foot ahead of the next, and you keep going. That seems to be the philosophy he's adopted to his political life.
But he's had a drought.
Yes, he has. But his name is still well recognized. He's a national figure, let's face it, for a guy who has never been elected to public office. So, he has some political capital to spend, and by golly, he's going to spend it.
My name is Brian Morneau. I was born and raised in Buffalo Narrows, right in the heart of the Desnethe-Missinippi-Churchill River. I know a lot of issues. That's why I'm running.
Brian Morin is running for the NDP, a party that hasn't done better than third in this riding in almost a decade. Unfortunately, soon after this all-candidates meeting, Morin became ill and went home to his town of Buffalo Narrows to recover. He's both the deputy mayor and deputy fire chief of the community.
They were saying that we are rich in resources, and yet we look at our back doors, we are so poor. We're living in poverty. A lot of our people that are living in 3 families in one house, 4 families in one house, those kind of things that are happening. Why is that happening if we're so rich in resources? That's why I'm running, because I want to represent you people, not me. You people out there in Ottawa, so that your voice will be heard and your voice will be heard strong. That's why I'm running for you guys. I'm not running for Brian Moran. I'm running for the people of this riding so that they are well represented in this riding. Thank you very much.
The Green Party candidate in this riding is George Moran. He's a 63-year-old grandfather of the Cree First Nation, and this is his first federal election. He's running on the issues of the environment and the economy.
For this riding are important to all of us. I think as this election proceeds, the economy seems to be the issue. We're all concerned about the economy, especially what's happening in the United States, and it's a serious situation, and we're not immune to it. I think the Green Party is a new party. We have new ideas with fresh people. We have our main platform, of course, is the environment. You ask the people in Galveston, when they're just returning to their homes, about how the world has changed, how the climate has changed, and how they have to now pick up the pieces, because we haven't done a very good job of taking care of Mother Earth. And if we don't do that, it's not going to take care of us. We see it all over. We have floods, we have droughts, I spoke to an elder from South End the other day. He says, we've never had tornadoes in northern Saskatchewan. There's species of animals starting to disappear in the north. I'm 63 years old, and I've seen some of these animals and birds disappearing. The world is changing in terms of the environment, and I'm concerned about it. And we're not going to have a good economy. Those have to be balanced, the economy and the environment. You can't have heavy economy and kick the environment all to hell, because it's not going to work. It has to be a balanced approach. It can be all economy, but on the other hand, can be all environment. By the way, my name is George Moran. What's he? Neither one. Sis? Yeah. Yeah. I know I'm at the federal election October 14th. You know how we our Green Party of Canada. October 14th, if you meet the town with my say, I go, Green Party. For myself personally, as an Aboriginal person from northern Saskatchewan, when I started finding out about the Green Party, I started finding out, hey, this is not much different in terms of their founding philosophy and their principles, in terms of what I was taught on how to look at the environment, how to respect the environment, the land. This is what I was taught by my father on the trap line in 1950. These are two compatible arrangements between what I was taught and what the Green Party stands for. So when I started knowing about the Green Party, I found that a lot of the stuff they say in their founding principles is what my father taught me on the trap line. And that basically, the Green Party talks about, the main thing is the environment, how we take care of the earth, or how we have not taken care of the earth. It's slowly being destroyed all over, not only in Canada, just all over. You see the hurricanes, the floods, the droughts, the fires. These are all man-made environmental things, and it's Mother Earth trying to tell us, you're not treating us properly, you're harming us, and that's why I'm responding this way.
When you talk to other members of the First Nations and you mention that to them and you say how much the Green Party sort of fits in with your own cultural beliefs, what kind of response are you getting? What are you hearing from your own people?
Well, I was just amazed at I don't have to talk to them very long, but when I start explaining about the Green Party and their founding principles, particularly about how the environment, the way the Green Party looks at the environment, say, hey, that makes sense. That's what I was taught. Well, yeah, why wouldn't we as Aboriginal people support the Green Party? And they just seem to come across saying, yeah, I really like the Green Party. I haven't had one negative response from anyone. Things that if I get elected, that I will try and improve the lives of First Nations people. So with that, I want to give you my brochure, and I want you to think about the Green Party. We stand for many things. They have a dynamite, a common sense platform on how they would partner with Aboriginal people. In addition to recognizing, of course, their treaty rights, all the rights that they negotiated through treaty.
The whole debate about Elizabeth May and getting in the debate, well, how did that affect your campaign?
Even before the issue of whether she'd be in the debate, I've been following some of her speeches and short statements and news reports on the radio and in the newspapers. And I'm very impressed with her. She's got such charisma. She's so practical, down to earth, and seems like a person that really cares about people, the Canadian voters, more particularly the respect for the environment, which, as I said, I was taught to treat the land like that, respect the land like that, and we have so much in common. I mean, I have so much in common with what the party stands for, and the way Elizabeth articulates it, it's almost like music to my ears.
One of the reasons why I decided to jump into the elections was that the morale of our Aboriginal peoples is very low. The elections is just not with their hearts are not with these elections, and one of the reasons why I'm running is that the Conservatives scare me. They really scare me in terms of our Aboriginal rights and treaty rights.
The other candidate here is also First Nation Cree. Rob Ballantyne is one of 6 candidates running nationally for the newly formed First Peoples National Party of Canada.
Oh, okay. I'm starting the First Peoples National Party in this electoral district. And I'm trying to convince our people to go to the polls. So I hope spread the good word. And
Ballantyne says the party was formed to empower Aboriginal people and get them more involved in the federal political process.
So what got you interested in politics in the first place?
Well, my educational background, mainly, which is Northern Studies, which is an emphasis on Aboriginal public administration, plus my historical personal background. I have been in the healing and wellness movement in the last 15 years, and I have witnessed even my own personal experience. You know, there's a lot of family violence, there's a lot of social problems that we are confronted with in our Aboriginal communities.
I understand that there was an incident very close to home for you when you were a teenager. Do you mind telling us about that?
The late 80s in Stanley Mission, we had the highest rates of suicide, cluster suicides. We had our young people killing themselves left and right. And I myself attempted suicide and did a lot of damage to my physical body. And my youngest baby sister committed suicide when he was 16 years old, and because of that, we've had a lot of our people have experienced a lot of emotional turmoil that we haven't even begun to start dealing with, and we need to. The message that I want to get across to our people that we have to do it ourselves. We can't wait for the government.
That experience you had as a teenager and losing your sister that way, did that in any way affect you actually getting into politics to where you are today?
Yes. Like I said, I have been in the healing and wellness movement, and it's a struggle. It's a continuous struggle. It's a continuous battle working in that field. Frustrating. Sometimes a feeling that we're not getting anywhere. And at one time I believed that the politics and healing shouldn't mix.
Was there a moment that happened where you sort of saw the connection between healing and politics? What happened?
Well, I started studying my education. You know, I started studying the political and the administrative structure of band politics, and began learning that the social problems that exist in our community is we need to change our governance system. And the current model of the governance system, which is the Indian Act regime model, is designed to fail our people. It's designed to fail our people, and we have to change that.
When we come back, a closer look at the riding and the people who live here.
And I say, well, just an ordinary day, and it's all your state of mind. At the end of the day, you just got to say, I say, well, just an ordinary day, and it's all your state of mind. At the end of the day, you just got to say it's alright. It's alright, it's alright.
He's Canada's most trusted pollster because he plays it by the numbers. He's Nick Nanos, CPAC's official pollster. All election long, the CPAC's Nanos partnership brings you expert political insight into the telltale trends behind the 2008 federal campaign. Talk numbers with Nick by picking up the phone or submitting your questions online at nickonthenumbers.com in a new live weekly segment of Primetime Politics. The winning number is 2, CPAC and Nanos on Primetime Politics.
Gentlemen, start your engines. One of the biggest challenges for all the candidates is the logistics of running a campaign in a riding that's bigger than most European countries.
The riding itself is interesting in itself. I mean, you might as well call it Saskatchewan's Amazing Race, because the riding is the same size as Germany. And that doesn't even make it Canada's biggest riding, if you can believe that. There's some larger ones up north, but
it's like half the province, isn't it?
It's half the province. It's as much a test of organization and transportation as it is a test of who's got the best message and that sort of thing.
It's also a test of who has the best vehicle. David Orchard definitely has the oldest, the 27-year-old Delta 88.
I think I've put on about between 60 and 70,000 kilometers since this whole process started. So that's a lot of miles, and there's a lot of territory yet to cover. There's places where they're very difficult to get to, and a lot of communities isolated. So there's a real challenge getting around the riding this.
Do they recognize the old Delta 88 when it pulls in, wherever you pull into?
Well, some places they do. Some places they do. Yeah, one of the people from one of the First Nations up north said they always look for the oldest car in the parking lot, and then they'll know they'll find mine.
What year is this?
It's 1981.
10 miles. How many kilometers?
Well, it's got 714,000 kilometers on it.
Rides nicely.
Rides nice. It's never let me down. It's still in good shape.
I'd like to make a note of the mileage that I cover, how many miles I'm traveling, kilometers, so people begin to realize and appreciate that this is such a big riding. Like from one corner of my constituency to the farthest corner, it would be a 15-hour drive. And if I have to drive way up to Black Lake to the northern part, it's over $2 a gallon over there. $2 a liter, I should say. So it's quite a challenge geographically and economically, because that's the biggest expense, is the travel cost. But I've never got into a major accident either. I carry sweetgrass in here, and I also carry the cross rosary. I carry the rosary here. So no, I got it in my I got it up here in my but my sweetgrass is in here in my rosary. And I believe in both religions, by the way. Well, ours wasn't a religion; it was just a method of worship. And so I believe in both, and I think those have been saviors for me. I remember one time I almost got into an accident. I don't know how. I'm sitting here driving because I'm sure I just looked away when this vehicle was coming straight at me, and it didn't hit me. And I'm sure it was going to hit me. But I've been fortunate that way.
This is a huge riding. What kind of challenges does that give for you to get out and meet the people?
It is a huge challenge for our party because it's a young party. We have zero budget to work with.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've only registered on the last minute many of the candidates, and that we're up against the political machinery of the mainstream parties where they have a huge budget. We don't have that benefit.
Are you able to get that message out? I mean, this is such a huge riding. There's communities everywhere. Are you getting out there, or you have other people doing that? How are you doing it?
Well, my biggest supporters are my relatives back home, and one of the advantages that we have right now is that the introduction of the First Peoples National Party are. So the reporters have been calling me left and right, curious what this party is about. So I have been taking advantage of that, and basically spread the message, and hopefully it gets around.
Not only is this riding huge, it's divided into two parts. Here in the south, there's a small strip of agricultural land. After that, from here all the way up to the Northwest Territories, it's nothing but wilderness, forests and lakes, sprinkled with small towns and villages and First Nation communities.
I think driving is probably the majority of the time spent campaigning. The towns, a lot of towns are about 40 kilometers apart, but when you go further into the north, it's an hour and a half away from each other. Trying to get to the communities is quite difficult. Just for instance, like Meadow Lake to Creighton and Denair Beach, you're looking at an 8-hour drive. So what you got to do is just break it up into tangible towns or mileage. So you do some stops in the communities. That way you get to meet everybody, and then you door knock in each community as much as you can. There were instances we were up at 6 o'clock in the morning driving to a small town, doing an event there, and as we're going down from community to community, hitting the coffee rows, knocking on the doors, until we wind up at our final destination. We're getting in about 11 or 12 o'clock at night. So it's quite vast.
Wherever Clark travels in the riding, he's usually accompanied by his campaign manager, Debbie Jodoin. She's become a surrogate mother to Clark ever since his own mother passed away. And together, they've had their fair share of adventures traveling all over the riding.
It is a big riding. We go all the way down from Mistawassus, and then we go from Manitoba border to the Alberta border. And then we go all the way up to Fond du Lac, up in the northern corner in Uranium City. And just before the writ was dropped, I was up in Uranium City, Stony Rapids, and Fond du Lac, and Walston Lake.
A lot of driving? How do you get there?
The only way you can get in there is to fly during the summer months, but during the winter, there's a winter access road. Ice road. So
lots of fun. And you must have a few adventures. I think you and Debbie have been doing the driving, eh?
Well, we've been from Creighton and Flin Flon, Denair Beach, all the way over to Pierceland, and we've been all the way up into Cumberland House, Sandy Bay. But I think one of the most interesting parts of our journey is we were in the Prince Albert National Park, and for an opening at the Elk Ridge Resort. And that was just phenomenal. We were coming out in the morning, and the wildlife on the side of the highway was phenomenal. We saw a huge elk just grazing, numerous deer. But I think the one thing we tried getting a camera and a picture of was a pack of 5 wolves crossing the road.
And just the size, I've never seen wolves in a pack before, especially in the north. And I've driven a lot of roads, and they stopped and watched us. And we tried to stop in our truck to get a picture, but by the time we stopped our truck, they took off into the woods.
Yeah, I can't imagine having to cover an area this size, but you do it together, do you? It's sort of.
Well, yeah, I drive it on certain times that he needs somebody to go with him into these areas, and it's just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. The roads that we drive on are like wild, as some of you know. You've driven them yourself, and it's a massive ride. It's very massive. And the wildlife, I love the wildlife. Those wolves that's the first time I ever saw a wolf. And the deer, the elk. We even saw, coyotes that day.
And foxes.
It was great.
And just driving around with Debbie, I don't call her Debbie in the office or anything. I call her Mom. She gives me a cuff in the back of the head on the trip.
I've sort of become a surrogate mom to Rob, yes, and to his family. His family, his wife, and 2 children have come very close to me, and they're like grandchildren to me. So it's a great working relationship with Rob, and I love working for him. He's a tremendous man. He's got strong convictions, and I hope I can continue on with Rob.
The other thing is the plan. What we got here from...
Liberal candidate David Orchard, who has never been married, has the same kind of dedicated support in his office. His campaign manager, Mary Elena Repo, has been with him since his fight against free trade back in the 1970s.
You've seen him in the ups and you've seen him in the downs. And there's been quite a few downs. Do you remember what was the toughest time for David, do you think? What was the hardest thing for him to handle?
I think the betrayal by Peter MacKay, the betrayal and the destruction of the Progressive Conservative Party. I think a lot of people had high hopes that party would have played a progressive role in the Canadian political arena. And to see that completely, the agreement between himself and MacKay.
He was hurt?
It was injurious, it was deeply hurtful. It hurt a lot of people. I mean, it was because he acted on behalf of so many people who believed in the Progressive Conservative Party, as I did. And then suddenly have the whole thing disappear. And so that was hurtful, and that was bewildering because it was so illegal and unconstitutional. So, you kind of wonder, how could this happen? How could historically significant Canadian party be taken over like that?
Do you remember his specific reaction to that?
Well, it was shocking.
What did he say to you?
I can't, it happened, there was a bewilderment, disbelief. And then, okay, now something quite drastic and horrible has happened, and we have to take stock of it. He, of course, fought it. So his first stance was to fight it legally, the merger. And when that failed in the courts, and then you had to take stock of what has happened and then evaluate the situation. And being the way he is, thorough and not quick about things, he took several years to think about whether to go back to the farm and become a farmer or enter politics in a different arena.
I don't have it, but Roy Bird would know. I don't know if you know Roy Bird at Montreal Lake. He's close to her, but I don't have a number, no. But I'm in Meadow Lake this morning, and did we have a chance to talk about, each band has the right to have a table at the polling station there where people can, if they come in without ID or not proper ID, they can, the band clerk or administrator can just do what's called a letter of attestation. And so that they just certify that this person is who he says he is or she is, and that they live on the reserve. And then they have the right to vote, but it's crucial that each band have that table there, so that people aren't turned away. I don't want people turned away from voting like as happened last time.
For Orchard, the main issue here is sustainable economic development, especially in the northern part of the riding.
This riding is one of the richest areas in the world, and many of the people are living in poverty, living in third world conditions. In the northern communities, it's a national disgrace that we have an area that is this rich and the people that are suffering in those kind of conditions. We've got housing shortage, we've got the caps on education funding, we've got the kind of roads that I just talked to you about. These conditions are unacceptable to me, and I want to fight to change those conditions for the people that live in the northern part of this riding. And in the southern part of the riding, the agricultural belt, there's a number of issues. The Harper government is going pell-mell trying to destroy the Canadian Wheat Board. It's overriding the law to do it. It's been stopped by the courts a couple of times, and Mr. Harper has said that anyone who stands in the way of his efforts to destroy the Canadian Wheat Board is going to get rolled over. So I'm telling Mr. Harper that the Canadian Wheat Board doesn't belong to him. It doesn't belong to his government. It belongs to the farmers of the West, and it's up to the farmers to decide what the future of the Wheat Board will be. So those are a few issues that we're dealing with, and there are many others as well.
The riding is so diverse. It's really hard to say that these are the three issues of the riding. I mean, you've got Métis communities, you've got First Nations communities, you've got non-Aboriginal farmers and cottagers in the south. That all of those groups have completely different issues. For some of the First Nations and Métis groups, they are complicated issues that go back into history and that are entangled by jurisdiction. Things like funding for schools between provincial and federal. These are tough issues to campaign on, and to as an MP to get some kind of resolution to it. It's not like promising to deliver funds for a new hockey rink or something like that. It's a complex political world.
We visited the small town of Green Lake to find out what people here thought the issues are. It's a small Métis community with a population of about 500 people. 3 years ago, the main employer in the town, the mill, closed its doors.
We're up here talking to people about the election. I was wondering what the main issues for you are. You living here in Green Lake. What are the main issues for you in this election?
I guess in this region would be the Métis hunting and fishing rights. And of course, they have a land claim. The Métis have a land claim, which includes the northern village of Green Lake. So that's about the serious ones. The rest are, they're highways, but that's provincial, and that's about it. Just get their hunting and fishing rights back, eh?
Yeah. What about things like the economy and jobs and the environment, all these sorts of things?
Well, this basically this is a forestry town too, eh? And of course, the forestry industry is gone.
Well, I noticed that the mill over here is closed down.
Yeah, that's been closed now for about 3 years now, and that's I think that's just due to how many mills are shutting down?
So what was the effect of that mill shutting down? A lot of people out of work, obviously?
Yes, a lot of people then, of course, took up jobs in Fort McMurray, and that's there you go. But I don't know. That is an issue. Forestry issue is an issue here in this town, but that's going to take a long time for that to get back on its feet. Eh?
The lack of jobs is one thing for sure. Yeah, and I'm not so sure about the poverty level. I guess it's like that in some communities. You see it more in the urban settings. I know that because I live there. And here you have relatives that can help you, It's a close-knit community. Yeah, so people helping each other.
And what do you do here?
Well, I'm Mark Ramshaw, and I'm the owner of this business. We opened it in June, and there hasn't been gas or groceries in town for 7 years, so we've opened a new business. We've got fast food, and it's going really well.
Yeah. What are your issues as far as this election is concerned, being a business owner in a small community like this?
Well, one of my biggest concerns, and it has a lot to do with this green shift here, is taxes and stuff. And I'm kind of concerned about that. Taxes, it's hard, when you're in a business, the higher the taxes go, the fewer employees you can hire and stuff like that. Your prices have to go up to compensate. So I'm really interested in keeping the tax base as low as we can so that I can hire more employees and do more business.
Of course, jobs is a big issue everywhere in the north here. How does it relate to what's going on here in Green Lake?
Well, my vision for this business was to hire locally. I did hire a manager that I brought in from elsewhere. But I basically said, I've had applications for people that want to work from other places, but I said we're going to hire Green Lake first because this is part of our vision for the community that we'd like to hire people from here.
What about the candidates that are running in this election? How well do you know the candidates? Which way might you be leaning in this election?
Mm-hmm. I've met Rob Clark, and I've heard of David Orchard. Brian Moran from, I believe he's from Buffalo and Arrows. I understand he speaks both Cree and Dene kind of thing, and that. So I'm probably going to vote for Rob Clark this time around. I believe the Conservatives' plan is the best one for me as a business owner, and also I think for the country too. I'm really concerned about going back to high deficits, and we were there before, and I've looked at the platforms and I've seen all of the promises that are out there, and I know the bottom line myself. You can't promise it unless you're going to pay for it, and who's to say that if we have this green shift that we're not going to raise income taxes later, because you can always drop a tax and raise it once you're in office. So I don't have a lot of confidence that the tax base will stay low with this green shift idea. So I'm not really too fussy about that.
I have a concern about environment and economy. Every year I live along the highway, I watch billions, literally billions of dollars worth of our resources leaving our region. I live in a community that when it has in excess of 70% unemployment. Drugs seem to be the major economic drive in our community and all the detriment that goes along with it.
Jobs and economic development are the big issues for most people here, but a lot of those jobs, especially in the northern part of the riding, depend on uranium mining and the nuclear industry, and that's become another controversial issue in this election.
Why?
The economy is a big one there. I mean, Saskatchewan has really been taking off economically, as you know, but the North, to some degree, is left out of that. There are still First Nations that have 60 to 80% unemployment. So jobs, the promise of jobs still rings pretty true up north. The north is resource rich, though. I mean, we get all of our uranium dug out of the north, and there's other resources there as well. So that's why the nuclear aspect of the race becomes important. That's why Mr. Harper's promise to open up foreign investment in uranium mines may be a factor. Certainly Rob Clark is trying to make it one. Jobs is still a key issue up north.
Well, what is the issue here, the nuclear issue? If you could explain that to me.
Well, Saskatchewan is one of the most fertile uranium resource areas in the world. It supplies much of the world's uranium. However, we just mine it here because the rest of the nuclear cycle has always been extremely contentious. There was, about 20-25 years ago, there was a proposal to build a refinery just outside of Saskatoon at Warren. It became this big, publicly debated event, and eventually the refinery didn't come here and went to Ontario instead. So, lately there's been much more of a willingness of, on the part of the public anyways, to look at some of those other aspects of the nuclear cycle that bring a lot of jobs, bring a lot of investment. And there's even been talk about burying nuclear waste here. I mean, nuclear waste is the ultimate thing that people don't want in their backyard. And Rob Clark is on record as saying that he'd be in favor of that as long as it means jobs to the north.
Isn't there another plan also to bury nuclear waste here? How do you feel about that?
There's 4 places that are being considered throughout Canada, and possibly uranium storage in northern Saskatchewan is an option. If it creates jobs and it's environmentally friendly and sound, I would encourage that. I'd go to the bat and try to get more jobs for Northerners.
Yeah, but of course a lot of people say, hey, not in my backyard. I don't want to have nuclear waste buried back here, thank you. What do you say to those people?
Well, I say you got to take into consideration the environment and look at the health risks. A lot of this uranium storage can be reused and taken back out and reused again when the technology increases. And it'll just be almost like a rotating door. Store it for a little while, then go reuse it when their reactors can reuse it themselves, just through technology.
So you don't have concerns about the safety issues of this? I mean, there's a lot of places that, you say, hey, we put nuclear waste here, and they go, oh, no way.
You got to realize the uranium is in the ground in the first place, and it's going down 1,200 meters into solid bedrock. There's no chance of cave-ins. It's the safest rock in the world to store the nuclear waste so it can be reused. There's no earthquakes, there's no fault lines. It's safe. It's going to be very remote. I don't know exactly where, But if it increases our jobs for the communities, I'd be takes into consideration health and safety. I'll encourage it.
There's an issue in this writing of the nuclear industry. What's that about, and how do your views on it differ from Mr. Clark's?
Well, I was part of the successful battle to stop the importation of high-level U.S. nuclear waste into Saskatchewan in the 1990s, when the U.S. nuclear industry was anxious to get rid of its waste and put it into northern Saskatchewan. They figured there's not very many people live there, mostly Aboriginal people, and I fought with others, and we were successful in stopping that. This whole issue of burying high-level nuclear waste, almost every state in the United States is opposed to it, so they're looking for a place to put their waste. In Canada here, they did research about burying it in Manitoba for years in the White Shell Research Facility, and then they realized that this stuff is going to leak. You bury it underground, it's dangerous for 1 million years, and it's going to leak through the water supply, so they shut down the research facility, and Manitoba banned the idea of putting high-level nuclear waste in its borders. I don't want that coming into Saskatchewan. That's going to affect the lives of everyone in Saskatchewan, the people in the north, for all of eternity, and people need to know, and we're not being told some of the dangers of that. So I stand opposed to doing something that's going to damage the environment so permanently for the people of the north. I'm proud to do that. My opponents, Mr. Harper and Mr. Clark, are gung-ho for the whole industry, and I'm saying industrial development in northern Saskatchewan has to be done in a sustainable way. It has to bring benefits to northerners, and it cannot destroy the future environment upon which we all depend.
So how tight is this race going to be? Is this going to be one that's really going to come right down to the wire, do you think?
This is an extremely hard race to predict because of the fact that Clark won it fairly easily, so you tend to think that he's got a bit of a cushion to work with there. But then again, Orchard is extremely well organized, and Clark won't have that sort of anti-liberal backlash to work with this time. I think it could be extremely close, and possibly the tipping point in it is just how the race is going nationally. I mean, if Stéphane Dion completely tanks in the national campaign, that's going to turn close races like this toward the Conservatives.